Welcome to the DingeCast. We are driven by a passion for discovery and the belief that history should be uncovered. Our mission is to reveal the hidden realities of the past to bring history into the light. Welcome to the DingeCast.
Welcome to the DingeCast. Tonight, tomorrow, and forever. This conversation will continue because there are questions. Inquiring minds want to know. Tonight, tomorrow, and forever, the question is about God. Now, personally, I was not raised in a church. I know many people have been. But that, I believe, allows me to see for myself what the value of worship and religion, although I'm not a religious person, I'm a spiritual person, but the value of the spirituality aspect of life, and I think a lot of people neglect that. And in my life, I've had many very compelling experiences, including prophetic dreams, which I wrote about in my book, Pay Attention to Your Intuition. But tonight, Brian and Mr. Behind the Scenes, the great Poobah, we will discuss this and some historical aspects of who is God, what is God, why is God, and the rest of it. And on that note, I'm turning it over to Mr. Behind the Scenes. Ryan, what do you say?
I hadn't even thought to talk about dreams tonight, but that's a really good piece of this whole idea here. So I kind of debated if we should talk about this, if it's too personal, too controversial, but I think it's fine. I think it's worth talking about. Like what is God? What is the higher power, right? If without religious institutions, if you were born, in a vacuum, you were never exposed to any of that, I think people would still inherently develop that sense of connection to some higher power, the universe. There's something there. And I wanted to cover the history side of like how so many of these religious institutions over time turned something that's so pure into a product. It's like when a great band sells out and their music just becomes mainstream noise. I'm like, my beliefs shouldn't have a barcode or need a PR marketing campaign. It's supposed to just be this pure personal connection. Like I've said before, I'm not religious, but I want to clarify what I mean by that. So for me, that just means I don't buy into that, modern watered down version of whatever the message is, whatever God is, that line that we get from modern mainstream religions like Christianity. I don't mean to single that one out, but that is kind of the topic tonight. I don't go to church. I haven't been to church in 34 years or something. But I feel like I'm still close to God, whatever that is. Maybe more so than like a lot of people who do go to church regularly. They're looking for something. Maybe they're struggling to find it. I want to help people just have that open mind, whatever you believe in or don't believe in. I'm not here to offend anybody. I just want to kind of have this conversation and about how I use this, how I try to connect with whatever that higher power is in a just more direct way. No extra parties involved, just me and that. I don't take orders from the Vatican or anybody else. This is my mission. So a lot of you probably know the church absorbed a lot of these old beliefs and stories. They rewrote traditions. They fought wars. They fought wars for hundreds, of years, just for power, using religion like a pawn in this scheme. And it's pretty devastating to think that millions and millions and millions and millions of people have died, just slain over tiny differences in doctrine. When deep down, I think most of us experience the same thing. We're all trying to express the same truths. And history's messy, right? Whether it's just different ideologies within one religion or different religions fighting over power and control. A lot of people have died in the name of this thing that's supposed to be about peace, love, all that hippie stuff. But for me, this is what it's about. It's about the bigger picture. I feel connected to a timeless God, an ancient God, not one that's boxed into the last 2,000 years of human history and control. And just some ways that I experience this, right? Like what is that spirituality feeling? What do people mean when they say that? I don't know. I can't speak for everybody. Me personally, what really sets me off are those moments of synchronicity, those just strange coincidences that happen, that feel meaningful. Like it's too weird of a coincidence to just be, oh, well, that was weird. Let me go on about my day. I when those things happen, I feel like that's that higher power moving through me, moving me through life. It's like a little, I mean, I don't know, it's a sign you're on the right path. You're in the right place at the right time, and that's why that thing happened. And that's if you're keeping yourself open to thinking about that, you'll notice when they happen. Um, I'll give you an example. I want to hear your guys' stories too. I know we've all got this happens to everybody. So like for me recently, one was I went to get my hair cut and I moved 400 miles away from where I grew up. So I go to get my hair cut, talking to the hairdresser, blah blah blah. Where are you from originally? When'd you move here? And she's like, "Oh, well, I'm from where you are too." I'm like, okay, well, like what county, this and that. Like, it started to get weird. And she, after I moved, she cut hair at the place that's less than a mile from my house where I used to go to get my hair cut. And it's a silly story, but of all people to cut my hair, it's like, how is this person here now? Why do things like this happen? I could have met anybody, could have gone to any place to get my hair cut, and this is the person I run into. Stuff like this happens almost, maybe not daily, but at least several times a week. Is it just me, or are you guys, is the same kind of thing happening to you?
Synchronicity is a real phenomenon, I guess you could say. Brian, what do you have to say about this?
I have a couple examples. I think lighter one first, and then more coincidental one second. But I for a while I lived in the Washington D.C. area, and I am a huge like thrift store and antique guy. In fact, tomorrow I'm going out thrifting with my wife. It's like our weekend thing. Anyway, while I was doing that, I back in the DC area, I found a coffee mug of all things that had a picture of the Space Shuttle Columbia, which was the one that burnt up on reentry on it.
Mm.
But this cup had obviously been made long before that happened. And it had the names of everyone that was involved with the construction of that particular orbiter, like all signed on the mug. And then if you flipped it over, it said it was made in my hometown. And like, what are the odds of that mug finding its way into my hands? It is like, what? It's right on there, Lancaster, California, which, if you know anything about the Palmdale, Lancaster area, they're basically the same town. So seeing that on there, I'm like, wow.
Let's talk about this for a minute, because I believe that part of it is the unfolding of something that is greater in a sense than everything else, which is destiny. Do you believe in destiny? Do you believe that your life has a purpose? Do you believe that that purpose is unfolding in all these little moments, these serendipitous moments, these synchronized moments, these odd occurrences? And then when you look deeper into it, you begin to understand that something is arranging this. And this is where we get into that conversation about God. What's behind the synchronicity? What's behind that moment where you happen to run into somebody like you were saying, Ryan? And I mean, I've had all kinds of amazing experiences in my life, but mine are so enormous that they're too big for me to actually try to describe in any period of time. It takes a whole book. That's why I write books about things, because there's so much more attached to it. And the best example I can give you is the handkerchief up the sleeve that the magician has. You know, he starts to pull on the handkerchief, and behind that comes another and another and another. So it all comes from somewhere. And then it goes to the question of, is there such a thing as an eternity? Because eternity and God, in my opinion, are synonymous. And so the other thing I wanted to say about God is this, is that many times people mistakenly describe God as they are. Because we anthropomorphize everything. We make God human. God's not human. God's a spirit. I mean, the Bible says that in almost every place. It doesn't say God is a person. And then he has his representations, his human representatives that show up in the form of angels and Jesus and prophets and that kind of thing. But you know what's weird about it is no matter which culture, they all have the same kind of thing. No matter what culture you go to, no matter what religion, they all have the same kind of components of representatives showing up with messages, with warnings, with miracles. Anyway, I'll throw it back to you guys.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, like the fact that again, it's global. It doesn't matter what corner of the earth
Yeah.
civilizations arose from. We all ended up believing in the same thing. That to me is significant. And I like what you said that it is maybe it is connected to destiny, right? That life has its peaks and valleys. Not every day is a good day. You're not always on the right track. And maybe I'm misremembering this, but I do feel like those moments, the synchronicity moments happen when you're doing the right thing, right? Like it
Hmm.
is that reminder to say, keep going that way. Figure out what you want in life, go for it. And these will be those messages along the way to reassure you, reinforce that. Maybe they happen on bad days too to let you know you're on the wrong path. I don't know. I feel like I associate it with positive confirmations though, in my experience.
Well, there's both because there's we hear about the Eastern concept of yin and yang. There's a balance achieved between the forces of light and darkness. And again, part of the idea of God is that God doesn't want zombies. He doesn't want robots walking around doing whatever it is that he tells them to do. So then we enter into the question of free will. Because if there is a creator, what did he put us here for? Did he put us here just to be obedient slaves, or did he give us choices to make about who we want to be and who we don't want to be? And here comes those moments of serendipity and synchronicity. And that synchronicity could be, and I want to say, I believe in angels because I've seen mine. I've had encounters with angelic beings, and they were giving me warnings on a number of occasions. And when I didn't listen to those warnings, I had bad experiences. So, see, the bad experience could potentially be that there's something there that's trying to prevent you from going down a certain road. I had a vision one time. I was getting ready to go out and have a nice day, and drive around the lake and go up to one of my favorite places for a lunch. And I got a mile down the road from my house, and all of a sudden I had this vision of a terrible car accident. So I pulled over and I asked myself this question: do I want to know if that was me? And I said, no, I don't want to find out. I don't want to know. So you see, there's a force in this universe, and I call it the grand operational designer. This force, this thing we call God, designed all this stuff, and I heard it said that God is in every grain of sand. That makes sense to me on a physics level. Something is holding that grain of sand in place, as a grain of sand on every beach, on every planet, on every rock, in anything you can see 100 million light years away. It's all the same force that is acting upon it. So throw it
Yeah.
back to you.
Yeah, like forces of nature, right? Like what are those forces? What is the origin of that?
Yeah. Yep.
And even that, like it's small to think of Earth as the place where God is. It's like if there is a God, it's all of space, any
Yeah.
planet, any solar system. It would have to be it doesn't have to be all or nothing, but I believe it would be that would be the case. And it's for me too, like I try to check myself where I'm thinking in small terms. It's like this finite life of ours, this little experience, little blip in the bigger picture that our flesh vessels have this experience. Yeah, there has to be something beyond that, but man, once I get into the afterlife, that's where I really don't know what I believe. I don't, do you know what I mean? Like I don't know, like the like the heaven and hell paradigm just seems so um basic in a way that it wouldn't be that simple. Like I'd like to think reincarnation or something that your energy, your soul, your being goes back to where it always was. Um, maybe then it comes back here, right? Like what is it? The Buddhist belief of, your soul starts as kind of like a diamond covered in tar, and every time you come back to the physical realm, if you learn those lessons, some of the tar comes off. I'm paraphrasing awfully, of course.
Oh yeah, I
And
agree.
then if you go through enough lives on this earth and you follow the right path, you do good, eventually all of the tar is removed and you remain in the cosmos. That's like your reward for solving solving the thing. Again, that's really poorly paraphrased, but
But
um,
to touch
it's
on a
just such a
couple of things
mystery.
you said though, um, you know how you were at the beginning you were talking about we all kind of come to this conclusion, everyone in the world kind of comes to this conclusion that there's sort of an ebb and flow to things, right? And I feel like if you, I'm sure you've heard of the adage or the fable of like the blind guys all trying to figure out what an elephant is by touching it. Oh, it's long and skinny. No, it's big and fat, and oh, it's hairy, and because they're all feeling different parts. One's feeling the trunk, one's feeling the leg, and so they're all accurately describing a part of what's in front of them, but not the whole picture. And it's almost impossible to put that whole picture together, you know. Forgot what my other thing was, but I'm sure it'll come to me. But
Well,
that was the big thing that was rattling through my mind.
yeah, but here's the thing. The word know, I believe it's from the Latin, means to be intimate with. So I believe that there essentially are only two kinds, or basically three kinds of people: those that want to know, those that don't want to know, and then those who actually do know. Now, you can only get to knowing, to an intimacy with a source of something, by making the journey toward it. Some people make a journey toward knowing, and me, I've spent my whole life. I'm going on 72 years old, and I've learned a lesson from every experience I've ever had. And I got to tell you, I never learned anything from when I did something right. I only learned when I made mistakes and did something wrong. And I had to be willing to learn from those mistakes and from ignoring whatever it is that the warnings were in order for me to grow. And so,
Yep.
what is life if it is not a growth process? And what is the growth process? Well, if you plant something in the ground, it grows up toward the light. And so, I think that, when we're talking about what is God and who is God and why is God, there's a reason that everything happens. And what our job to do is to kind of do that big giant crossword puzzle called life and try to get the bigger picture. See? And then when we talk about, well, what's next, what's in the afterlife, and that really remains to be seen. Honestly, it remains to be seen. Now, I have had an out of body experience that lasted 3 days. I didn't die. My soul, my spirit, whatever you want to call it, popped out of my body when I was about 13 years old, early 13-year-old. And out for 3 days, I was out of my body, following around my human body like a balloon tied to my wrist. 3 days after that, I popped back in my body. But what I discovered is this: there's something in us that is everlasting. And so the soul, in relationship to the source of the soul, whatever it is that it is from the source, that source is everlasting, it's eternal, it's immutable, it's unchangeable. And there's a part of us that is the same. Where it goes after this body lies down, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I tell you this: I've studied near death experiences for the last 40 years. And I am absolutely convinced that there is an afterlife. Now, it may be different for every human being. It could be that you are the engineer and the designer of your own afterlife. I don't know for sure, but I'm sure that there is something beyond this.
That's why it's so fascinating, right? This is the mystery that humans have pondered since the beginning of thinking, right? That we've all wanted to know what's on that other side. It really is interesting to think about. And I love what you said that you never learn anything from doing something right.
Nope.
There's no success like failure, right?
That's right.
No, I
And
mean, one of my favorite quotes is at the end of one of my favorite anime, and it's, there's no such thing as a painless lesson. They just don't exist.
Mm.
Like, yep, I mean, that is just so true. You don't learn anything, like you said, by doing it right, because you did it right. There was nothing to learn. You got it.
Well, wait, well, let's talk about that for a minute because we were talking about serendipity and synchronicity. See, there are moments in life that guide you. I remember I was driving on the LA freeway and I got this instinct. It just get over in the other lane. Something said to me. And as I did, a car went speeding past me and hit the car in front of me. I've had these synchronized moments, the synchronistic moments all my life where something just says to me, just follow my prompt, right? And
Mhm.
so if we are following the prompts, but if we're not following the prompts, then you find out about what you just said, Brian. There are no painless lessons or, that you can learn from. Although you can, because when you go to school, you learn math and you learn, but these are sort of perfunctory things. These are technical things. And you don't have to have pain in order to learn technical things. But spiritually,
Oh,
pain is the greatest teacher.
oh yeah.
this is okay, this is where I'm irrationally superstitious and like a God-fearing man that when everything's going really well, I start to get nervous where I'm like
Mm,
something bad has to happen to balance this back out. And it's like I've come
mm.
to this this deal with the universe where give me a comfortable problem that I can live with so that nothing bad happens. Like I want to keep that balance. That's so irrational, but I
Well,
No,
honestly
can
I
I?
have
think
the
like that
same.
sometimes.
I would
I have the
offer.
same fear.
I would offer an answer though, and that is when things are going well, thank thank the source of that. In other words, recognize the source of that. That's kind of a form of worship. When your life is going in the right direction and you recognize the reasons why, that validates what that source of that well-being is about. See, I recognize whatever you are out there. Thank you, thank you. It's like if somebody brings you some cookies to your front door. Thank you. I didn't expect this, but you recognize that it's been a gift, and so life is full of gifts, and life is full of downfalls. But also, the flip side of thanking the good side of things is to acknowledge when things go wrong and say, thanks for sharing that message with me. Thank you for, because I've had to do this in my life. I mean, there are times too when I've been very stubborn and very egotistical, and I got smacked down hard. And so when I'm getting back up and I'm regaining myself, I'm realizing that I brought that upon myself. It wasn't the world that did that to me, it was me. And so, that challenge, that creates the balance there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the part that scares me is again, I know these are irrational fears, but like, driving is sketchy. Like you
Oh,
could
yeah.
watch the local news. It's like every day on whatever highway you live near, there's a fatal accident. And it's like
Oh yeah.
somebody's number gets called every day. And I thank every time I get home safely, I pull my car into the driveway. I'm like, I could kiss the pavement, just say thank you.
There
Thank
you
you for
go.
letting us get home today. I
Yep.
don't ask for much. Just don't let me be the car that crazy person sideswipes because you can't oftentimes yeah, like you said, sometimes you have those moments of warning. Sometimes you don't have time to even prepare or notice it's coming. And that's the fear that I have that you can do everything in your life to try to control everything and be safe. And then out of nowhere, just that particle that had to interact with you just comes crashing in. Like that's what I'm afraid of.
There's an old show called Dead Like Me where that's the whole premise or the setup for the show is this chick's walking down the street and gets hit in the head with a toilet seat that fell off of the space station. She had no control over that, just mind her own.
I've seen
Wham!
that show. It's pretty good.
Yeah, okay, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. She ends up in heaven, right? Or wherever she is.
She ends up being like a Grim Reaper intern. So
Yeah.
like Grim Reaper in training.
Yeah. She ends up in the spiritual realm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that because it just shows like you have absolutely no control. It could just happen at any moment in any way. Just blam.
However, not to get political, but our president, our current president, just happened to turn his head at the right moment and a bullet went through his ear. If his head was 2 inches in the other direction, he would have been a dead man.
Oh, I know.
So,
That was
again, these are moments of synchronicity. Somebody put up the chart that he wanted. He looks at the chart. He turns his head just at the right moment. Yeah. You think something turned his head? See, I believe in what you might call divine intervention. I believe that there are forces at work, and then there's the counter force that's working to keep that dark force, or whatever it may be, from having its way. Because we are vessels, okay? We are here for a reason. We're here for a purpose. We may be here for a mission. I believe we're all here for a mission, except for some people never discover what their ultimate mission might have been because their life is so full of fighting. Like in a video game, every time you kill a zombie or a monster, 10 more pop up. That can be a part of your experience. But at the same time, in the movie Conan the Barbarian, remember in the beginning of the movie, he was walking and he was tied to a millstone and there were 10 other men with him. And over time, the other men died and he was the last one standing. You could be the last one standing because what doesn't kill you can make you stronger. So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And that means a lot more than what people think, like it literally means not only is it like, take the medicine, but it's also like, yeah, you learned from that. So now you're stronger. You have that extra, bit of armor now, that you didn't have before.
Yeah, totally.
And I believe in divine intervention as well, but there's other factors in there, right? Like, and I hope that this isn't offensive to bring up, but the guy that did catch the bullet at that rally,
yeah,
he was, he protected his family.
There you go.
And he was the one that died, and it's like they're just, that wasn't like. It's an unfortunate outcome for him. It's like, it's not like he deserved that, or he probably was a great person. It's like, you don't know why, like grandmom's in her car with her grandkids. They took him out to a movie. Drunk driver hits them and kills them all. It's like, what did they do to deserve that? It's not about that, but it's that there's things that are hard to understand why it happens the way it does. If we want to believe in the interconnectivityness of everything, that's not a word, I guess. Those are the things I think challenge people or make them.
However, with the fireman did something very noble by protecting his wife and I believe 2 of his daughters or whatever. He threw himself in front of the bullet. You see, in my opinion, this goes back to the afterlife aspect of it, because when you are motivated to do things out of noble intent, to do the right thing. I mean, it's just an impulse personally that guy had.
He's a hero.
To protect. He was a hero. But not only that, but I believe that there are rewards that are, like the punishment must, or the punishment must fit the crime, but the reward must fit the sacrifice. I think that we are in this world to make sacrifices, to make choices about what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. If we make the right choice, if we follow the right instinct, or if we follow the wrong instinct, and I love these life after death programs where people have these near-death experiences and they end up in hell. I was just listening to one on a show that I did about a priest who thought, he lived his whole life trying to serve God. So he has a heart attack and he ends up having a near-death experience and he goes to hell. And he finds out that he had resentment towards his father his whole life. He hated his father. And that's what he learned in that near-death experience. He repented for that. He realized he shouldn't have hated his father. His father didn't know any better. But you see, there's a balance to be achieved here. Even in the more terrible experiences that people have, there is a balance. And so, the fireman who took the bullet, I think that he has an eternal reward for that. Where somebody does something terrible, like, I don't know, just a that does something terrible, and then God knows what happens to them when they die. Do they get a second chance on the other side? I don't know. Maybe we could all hope that that's the case, that you get a second chance. I know there's certain religions that really believe you could pray for people, and that your prayers give them second chance. I don't believe that personally, but you
Yeah.
know,
I guess you could take the Gnostic approach as well, that this life of ours is the prison, right? And that the
yes,
afterlife and the before life is when you are free. And
yes, yeah,
um
Heard that, yeah.
somebody like the fireman, it's like obviously there's a lot of tragedy left in its wake for those who are still here. But it's just like your heroic act sets you free. You shall
yeah,
be released, right? Like the Bob Dylan
yeah,
song. It's a
yep,
the song about a prisoner, but if you read into the lyrics, people there's a theory that the song really is about, being sentenced to prison for, like, he's wrongfully accused of a crime. The analogy is you're born. You didn't ask to be born. He didn't ask to be in prison, and he's trying to get out of prison and get over those walls, get back to where he came from. I don't know. It's a good song.
That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah.
That's fascinating. One of my favorite anime, I know I talk about this a lot, but that is the overarching theme. They even open every episode with it, which is the concept of equivalent exchange,
Mm,
where you cannot gain without sacrifice. And that theme runs throughout the show in so many different levels that are obvious and subconscious, that are really subtle in there that you're not really going to pick up on right away. And I mean, the show like kicks off with these boys' mom dying, and they try to bring her back, and they lose something for it. But you see that the whole process of losing, various things, loved ones in various ways, important things in various ways, all have this equivalent or reward that you might not necessarily see, obviously, at first. It may be more, like you would say, maybe metaphysical or something more vague that you just don't grasp right away.
mm-hmm. So I had an experience in which, and talk about dreams. I don't even know if this was a dream, but I had a daughter. I have a daughter that I hadn't seen for about 20 years. She went a different direction in her life. And so finally, after 20 years, I got together with her, and I saw these two little children that she has, and it was it was a kind of a joyous moment of reunion. But that night, my father, who's been deceased for 4 years, came to me and kissed me on the forehead. And it was so real to me. I felt it. It
Yeah.
reverberated through me like a human being had come in. So I want to say this about, the meaning and the purpose of life. And I'm talking about the fireman who protected his family. His love never ever dissipates. The love that he had was demonstrated in an act of nobility and sacrifice. That love stays with that family forever. They may miss his human form, but they know that he's not gone. I know that nobody actually ever goes away. They only just transfer from one space to another. And this is the beauty of eternity, and this is the beauty of a creator, an intelligent designer who has a purpose for everything in his creation. In this creation, I don't see God as a human. I see God as a force. Like, you feel the wind, and when you see a storm, wow, that's incredible. When you see a tornado, it's incredible. When you see a 110-foot wave, it's incredible. It's a force. God is behind all of that, in my opinion, because I don't see God as I am. I see God in the rawest form in all of the creation itself. When we see these, in our solar system, there's discussion about how strange our solar system is, how out of place all the planets are. The giant planets way out and the smaller planets close in. It's so interesting to me how you can see the designer at work in all things, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just just as a
I
point.
agree with that. Isn't that like Brian Greene's thing, that it's
Yeah.
like the fine, like life exists, or just everything is the way it is from this fine-tuned parameters that the math equations work out perfectly. It's like whatever that math is that creates all the forces, gravity, weather, everything. It's like that's the power. That has to be.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I've always seen it is even, I'm more agnostic now, but, I was raised through every branch of Christianity there is, Quaker to Catholic and back. And
Hmm.
I've always seen God and physics as the same thing. That's if I had to break it down into its most basic form, that's how I would describe my philosophy is God and physics are the same guy.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
And
And I'll
again,
tell you
like
one more
I,
thing.
yeah, go for it.
Well, just about organized religion, I have never been a big fan of organized religion. I was never forced into one, but my dad was a philosopher. As I said, he wrote 22 books. And he was a person who had a gift of intuition, and he was able to heal certain kinds of conditions in people simply by telling them things that nobody else had told them. Like you resent somebody, and that resentment is eating you up. And people will get better when they realized that they were full of anger, they didn't think they were, that they had a certain kind of fear of something because they got traumatized. My dad was kind of a psychologist, but he was more of a metaphysical psychologist, kind of like Jung in that vein, very much like Eckhart Tolle. That was, if you know who Eckhart Tolle is, you would see that he takes practical application of basic principles of life. And but the idea is that we all have the capacity to either heal and raise people up to a higher level, a higher frequency. There he is. Or to bring people down and lower their frequency and take them into a place of struggle as opposed to help them out of a place of struggle. And so this is part of what people have to grasp is that if you are a person who wants to know the truth, there's freedom in that. But if you run away from the truth, whatever it may be, and by the way, this is one of the reasons why we enjoy doing this show, because we're trying to shed some light or AKA truth on certain things that other people have a struggle with. They don't want you to know the truth for whatever reason. But there's freedom in truth. There's ultimate freedom in truth. And that because there's a principle behind it, and that principle is immutable. And the soul that you have, the life force spirit that you have in you, that we commonly call the soul, is, in my opinion, inextinguishable. It will last forever because it came from a place of forever. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when you think, oh, my life isn't worth living or whatever, or, life is too hard. No, life is worth living. Life is worth it.
I mean,
Absolutely.
a couple quotes just right off the bat come to mind with what you said there. Like
Yeah.
one of my favorite quotes from Carl Sagan is, I don't want to believe, I want to know.
Yes.
I just absolutely love that.
Right.
And then I had another one, but that was one of the big ones that came to mind. Oh, and the it's better. Where is it? I can paraphrase it before I could find it, but I'd rather view the universe for what it is rather than for what I wish it to be, no matter how reassuring, right? And there's, I don't know how to tie that back in, but but like, we're talking about speaking truth, that's just the pursuit of truth. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather, know instead of believe and view things for how they are instead of how I wish them to be.
But see, that's one of the most authentic things you can do,
Yeah.
right? In other words, it's easy to take somebody's word for something. Oh, okay. If you say so. You ever heard yourself say that?
Yep.
But for me, I'm the same as you, Brian. I want to see it for myself. I don't care. And sometimes it's okay to take somebody's word for something. Because if it really doesn't matter that much, who cares anyway, right? Like, oh, it was a red motorcycle. It wasn't orange. Okay, fine. Who cares? But there are things that you absolutely, positively have to see for yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Especially your beliefs, right? Are you going to believe what
Yeah.
you believe or what somebody tells you to believe? You should definitely be able to make up your own mind for stuff like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's why, like I'll go back to the wars, like any holy war. It's so upsetting that this is such a problem for humanity that that we need to fight these different religions feel the need to I mean there's times where it's about land and power, but sometimes it is just that we just don't want those people who believe their thing to exist. We have to just wipe them off the face of the earth.
Yep.
And what everybody believes really isn't that different. I don't think there should be like one religion for all the earth. That's not at
That'd
all
be
what I
silly.
think would be healthy. But um, can't we all just get along? Like,
Yeah, I know.
it's just so upsetting to think about. It's like,
But
yeah,
see,
how did we get
the
here?
the problem though is mongoose and cobra. See, these are mortal enemies, right? And there are certain people, there's a saying, there are none so blind as those who will not see. If somebody cannot have their eyes open to realize that we have more in common than we have indifferent, right?
Yeah.
If we can see our commonalities, we're more likely to succeed in relationships. But if we cannot see the commonality in another person, and again, this is an old Indian saying, walk a mile in in their moccasins, right?
Yep.
Try to understand who they are before you judge them or destroy them, But a lot of people don't because they're so indoctrinated. This is the problem now that we get to
Yep.
with organized religion. Indoctrination is no different than a political system, a feudal system. Indoctrination of any kind of religion, including the good religions, still doesn't allow a person to be authentically the person that the religion tells them they should be. And to give an example, there is a story in the Bible about Jesus asking a Samaritan woman, to draw him some water from a well. She was surprised because the Samaritans and the Jews they didn't communicate. They didn't like each other. But he knew everything about her. And what he said to her was so refreshing that it just totally blew her mind because he knew that she was married to six times and she was living with some man. But he said, you know what? You don't have to worship here at Jacob's Well anymore. Now, and the time has come where you can worship in spirit and in truth. So this was the liberating message that a man like Jesus came, which is, let's get rid of all these rules and regulations. Let's stop fighting each other over the rules and regulations, because this is all that it is, really. It's about rules
Yeah.
and regulations and who's are right and who's are wrong. And
Yep.
just live by spirit and truth. If we did that, we would have a world of peace. But people, it's mongoose and cobra. Cobra is cobra. It has got a nature. Mongoose will fight to defend itself. Unfortunately, this is where we find ourselves today.
And what did he
I
get
mean,
for trying to pass that message along? You know what I
yep.
mean? Like,
I mean that's how it's always been. I mean, it's an adage as old as time itself. Those who preach the truth will be the ones that get the most. I mean, I don't know how to say it properly, but you'll get like the most crap for it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like no one wants to hear the truth. The truth just no even mundane things just tend to hurt to hear the truth. You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And we'll get into the bamboozlement in a second here of
Ah,
the first council of Nicaea, but you maybe want to bring this up now because again, like decoupling the institutions from the beliefs themselves. Let's talk about Jesus, right? For me, there's something really interesting about his life, that the 40 days in the desert, fasting and all this. This was a vision quest. This was
Yep.
in every culture they have this idea, and I really think whoever he was, however he became to be who he was, that was the time in his life where he gained that clarity, that to disconnect from everything, to go on a 40-day fasting vision quest in the desert. You're going to come back with some stuff. You are going to tap into something very pure when there's not, I wouldn't say no distractions, but you are just out there. It's just you and the universe. So I just think that's really interesting that even he represents that time in your life where you can tap in to get that clarity. He definitely was an individual who got that, and he made it his life's mission to then teach what he learned from that experience. That's to me that's really really profound. That I think we all get that in little ways here and there. Some of us are maybe luckier than others, lucky that you've had a life experience that opened you up to that in whatever way that is for you personally and your life and the path that you're on.
and think about this. Think about how being that far back in time without the modern technology we have, where there's planes and satellites and everything flying around all the time, cars and roads always nearby, right? Think about how just in the middle of nowhere and connected to nature he must have felt there.
Oh yeah.
You know, like I went out to this lake bed a few times in California where it was so disconnected from the rest of the world that it gave me panic attacks a few times.
Yeah.
It was so liminal and creepy. And just imagine being out there for 40 days in the middle of the night, you know, just being that connected to nature. Like that would give you some mental clarity.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you, I go camping, and however far back you go in most areas, you can still hear that distant hum of a highway or something.
Yep.
There's still civilization just beyond wherever. There
You
was
can see the
one time
glow
in
on the horizon.
Colorado where we were out there, and the deafening silence was horrifying. We were like, there is nothing. There wasn't even like there weren't even bugs chirping or something. It was just there's nothing like where is the nearest anything? That's a weird feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah.
That's what El Mirage Lake Bed was like when I went. Not a sound. It was
Yeah.
like, where
That
am
was
I?
different. I'm so used to the hum of a highway somewhere. It's weird without that. You really feel like you're just gone.
It's creepy.
Yeah,
For
when I
sure.
was a kid, we had a home very close to LAX, and every
Ah,
night you'd hear the airplanes going over, And then when we moved to a beach town, and man, it took me months to adjust to not hearing that. It was, in other words,
oh
there was
yeah.
a familiar reassurance that life was going on as usual, and you take that away, and now there's a huge disruption in your mind stream.
Yep.
So yes, I mean, taking away those familiar things helps you to realign into the now moment. But see, again, living in the now moment, that's a challenge because the brain starts to produce all kinds of erroneous thoughts. I mean, this is where fear comes in. This is where anxiety enters into the picture.
Yep.
And, to deal with it properly means that all of a sudden that's not a distraction. Now you got time to really focus in on what's important, whatever that may be.
Yep. I mean, in Star Wars, the famous quote is, fear leads to anger and anger leads to hate,
Yes.
implying that fear or anger is built from fear.
It
Fear
is.
of
It
the
is
unknown.
absolutely built from fear. Your mind never where it should be.
Oh man, you do a good Yoda.
Of course I do. I practice it since 1978.
Nice. God, I wish I could have, been alive back then to actually see that, like when it was new. I only lived
Uh,
through the prequel era. I mean, they're my favorites. I love them all actually equally, but I have an affinity definitely for the
by the
prequels.
way, I was watching some of the best scenes of Star Wars on a YouTube compilation, and I discovered something really interesting that the X-Wing pilots have this thing that goes right into the middle of their forehead from the right side of their head.
Oh,
It's like a prong, and it's basically a control arm thing, which they use
yeah.
their intuition. Part of that is using their intuition to fly the X-wing. I thought that was really interesting. That is a leftover of the tefillin from the ancient Hebrew practice of meditation. The tefillin was this leather strap that had the Ten Commandments that would
Oh,
hang down in the middle of your forehead,
Wow.
and a strap that would wrap around your arm and go down into your hand. In the latest incursion of the Israelis into Syria, this was probably within the last 15 years, they showed pictures of the military of the IDF meditating with the tefillin.
oh,
They
that's neat.
showed pictures of it for the first time I'd ever seen it in the battlefield. And by the way, the ancient Spartans used to meditate before they went into battle also.
This is true.
So
There's
how did we get here, right? So why are things the way they are? And how is that different from how it used to be? And what changed, right? Like I think most people have heard, oh well, like, the church, I'm sorry, there's thunder in the background. I think, the church,
oh, you're getting hit with that too.
stole pagan beliefs, wove it into everything, repackaged it. Um,
By the
let's
way,
touch
you
on
know what
that.
that thunder is? That's God clapping.
There you go. Oh, we're doing a good job. All right.
Yes. A little serendipity there.
So, we can, I'll try to get through. There's a lot to cover, so let's try to just get through the,
Okay.
the main points
Sorry,
here.
I know we've
Oh no,
we've
yeah. Um, it's like I don't know what people thought or believed, but it's not like Jesus was here, he was crucified, and then the next day everybody's like, "Well, we got to start a religion. We all got to start following this guy." And Rome was like, "Sure, cool, new thing. Let's just switch it up." It took hundreds of years, right? The Romans were not on board with this, for the longest time. They were persecuting people
Yep.
for still following this guy. And I think eventually it was just too big of a movement that they just had to cave and come up with a plan. They're like, we if you can't beat it, you know,
Integrate it.
incorporate it.
Yep.
So the Council of Nicaea is really, I think the pinpoint moment where this really happened, right? That this was their, it wasn't even a religious meeting, right? It's obviously about the modern version of the Bible, Jesus, but it was a political move. They're like, how do we unify the empire under just one official version of Christianity? Because before that, Christians believed there was a lot of different beliefs about Jesus, his life, what happened, his message, spirituality, the divine. People believed in all kinds of gods. So this council was like, okay, everybody needs to be on the same page. There's way too many of us. This is a problem. So they decided which texts were the official ones. That was when they declared that Jesus was divine, a co-equal of God. That wasn't really the big belief at the time. It took hundreds of years for that to really, uh, formalize. And nowadays, like I'm talking about the Council of Nicaea, nowadays it's the Vatican, right? That's what the centralized authority is. And they dictate what belief should look like. So this grassroots, diverse spiritual movement just became another top-down institution. And it just doesn't sit well with me. Like there should be some structure to it. It shouldn't be a free-for-all, but the way that they did it, I think it's important for people to know. Because faith, this connection that we're talking about, this existed long before religious institutions. I mean, imagine humans a million years ago sitting around looking at the stars. What do you think they were thinking about? They didn't need to be controlled to think like this. And the council wasn't even really, okay, well, what do we believe? What do we all believe in? Let's agree on these. It was more about how do we get everybody on board with this? And that's where stealing and weaving other local pagan traditions into it became a part of the strategy. So, like December 25th, Christmas, right? Has nothing to do with Jesus' birth. Most people already know that. This was the Roman pagan festival Saturnalia. I think I got a picture here. Yep. And this was like the big solstice blowout. This was the big party. And the church, it wasn't it was a clever move. I don't agree with it, but it was clever that they're like, if we try to change this, people will rebel. But if we just slap Christ's birth on there, people are going to celebrate anyway. Like, yeah, we can still do it. We can still party, but we have to do the Jesus thing. That's cool with me. Um, it only takes what, one or two generations, and your kids think that's always been the way, right? How many things that we believe are actually very recent marketing campaigns?
Well, here,
How much are you
really,
supposed to spend on your wedding ring? Like, well, two
yeah,
thirds of
stuff
your
like
salary.
that.
It's like that was a De Beers marketing campaign. The people that sell you the diamonds tell you how much to spend on the diamonds. But
Yep,
one
that's one of
generation
the most famous
later,
ones.
you're like, I don't know. I think that's in the Bible. I think it's always been that way. I don't know.
Like another really famous one, was the Pledge of Allegiance. That
Yeah.
was specifically designed to sell flags to schools. And we integrate that into our culture as if that's always been a thing. And it's like, no, that was just like, I'm just loving it for flags. You
It's
know,
like, well, the founding fathers, right? In God we trust. Nope. That
so,
was like the 1940s. That's
yep.
way later. And that's the point. Like you would think that these things were so eternal, and then you realize most of these were marketing campaigns meant to control people. And we're just talking about this to make sure you can think for yourself.
Oh, even I just learned that like even our traditional breakfasts, like bacon and eggs and stuff, that comes from marketing campaigns and stuff like that. And I was like, holy
Edward
crap.
Bernays had was hired by like what was it, Purdue or not? They're like, we need to sell more pork products, and he's like, well, what's a meal that's missing it? Oh, breakfast. Well, hey, bacon. We're gonna sell you more pork. And I mean, bacon and eggs is delicious, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
but
have
it
no
was sort of
idea.
like this is good for you. Get that fatty, greasy as much as you can get. It's good for you, and you're like, are you
Stuff
sure?
that makes you tired in the morning. You know what I mean? Like this is stuff you're supposed to have at night to put you to sleep. But no,
Yeah,
why do I feel so
that's the
groggy
truth.
at
Man.
work?
I can't have donuts anymore, man. Donuts just make me want to go to back right back to sleep. It's
Oh,
too
I know.
bad.
I get like jittery and tired.
Yeah.
It's
Easter, same thing, right? From Astra, the fertility goddess, eggs and bunnies,
yep.
pagan fertility symbols. That's where all that comes from. Halloween, All Hallows Eve, All Hallows. It was originally Samhain, probably saying that wrong, an ancient Celtic festival honoring the dead. And All Saints Day, if I'm not mistaken, was originally on October 31st, and the church moved that to the following day, November 1st, as like a baptism of Samhain. Uh, all interesting moves, right? And there's more. There's like Candlemas, February 2nd, May Day. All of the these
One note
were,
on oh yeah, was that Bonfire Night too? That's another one that the British do as their version of Halloween. I
and
just
I
saw
think
that.
if I'm not mistaken, there are countries that still celebrate this in some way. Like it's like how to like the start of summer. So it's like it's not gone. But like the church did try to suppress this. Like the maypole dances still go on. Yeah, like I was gonna say Sweden. So they didn't crush all of it, but it's interesting that the work that went into trying to replace these and in probably at the time in a way to hopefully that they were hoping people would forget the older traditions and just assume it had always been this way.
Yep.
Uh, it's a really interesting PR
We're seeing
campaign.
that in pop culture right now with a lot of reboots and stuff. That is something that not a lot of people are specifically pointing out. Again, it's like the elephant analogy. They can't quite put their finger on it, but I've always heard people talk about basically the same thing without specifically saying it, which is there's a lot of these, as you've noticed, a lot of our culture just seems to be just 80s and 90s and nothing new. And you notice that they're not like calling certain movies, certain video games, like Halo 7. They're just calling it Halo, trying to reboot and go, this is how it always, no, this is how it always was. So you see that not just in religion, but in commercial popular culture as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, I watch a lot of old movies and I still keep finding more and more where you're like that movie from the 90s. You're like that even that was a remake from a film in the 1940s. You're like how
Yep,
many
like
how
Flubber.
many examples am I going to find of this? Is anything in my lifetime original? I mean, yes,
Exactly.
but it's surprising how much you find out wasn't.
Yeah, like Flubber was originally the Nutty Professor. And I'm like, wait, that was a remake?
Yeah. Even music, man. Trying to
Oh
trace
yeah.
back the original artist of even older songs too. That's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. Um,
Oh yeah.
well, you
I'm surprised
mentioned
you don't
Halo,
realize.
but this a different Halo, like the halos around a saint's head. That's
Yep.
pre-Christian too. The sun god imagery.
Yep.
I mean, I could pull up pictures of ancient Egypt. You guys have seen it. The Christmas tree, pagan, Germanic, Norse, the Norse Yule.
Yep.
Uh, that was rebranded to be about Christ, not the evergreen trees honored life in the dead of winter, all that stuff. The Yule log, even mistletoe, is another a sacred plant, fertility, peace symbol. Just all just kind of lumped in with all the other Christmas Christianization of pagan customs. Like I said, Easter eggs, even the cross, right? The cross, Egyptians, Babylonians, a symbol of life in all four directions. The church adopted that so much later to be the core Christian symbol.
And
And
think
I
about
didn't,
this
I
too.
didn't
What
even know
is
this from before. The early Christians preferred the fish symbol. That was new to me. I always wondered where the fish came from and what kind of happened with that being the
yeah,
predominant symbol.
wasn't that like a secret way for them to like hide from the Romans and communicate?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Super cool. Um, and isn't that weird though, right? It's not like the church, it's like not that they sat down and acknowledged, okay, Jesus's message is dope. We have to spread it. It was just like, let's rewrite culture to get that pagan Norse stuff out of here. we'll keep the symbols, but we're going to change the meaning. It's so devious.
Well, look at like this is
Do
gonna be
they
really
even
controversial.
do they even believe in God? Like what do they believe in? What are they doing?
Like this is a really controversial example, I know, but I mean, one of my favorite historical examples. The swastika is not an originally
Oh yeah.
a symbol. It's a Catholic symbol, and they just
I
took
mean,
it
it's
and made it
way
mean
older than
something, and
that.
that
Yeah.
made, yeah, we just
No, no.
associate that symbol with evil. And it's like, wait, no, 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 that's not where that comes from.
People see these like Buddhist temples and they see that symbol and they're like, "Oh, that's awful. They need to take that down." It's like that was here so much longer.
Well, the American Indians also had
Yeah,
They certainly did. Yeah.
a
and then
lot
there's
of
like,
that symbology.
isn't it like the Welsh flag or one of the British flags has their own version where it's three legs that make a very similar shape to and it's like, yeah, no, that rotating weird right triangle thing or right angle thing, that's a symbol that's ubiquitous throughout culture. That's just
I
been
uh I
co-opted.
forget what country it was. It was probably Peru if I had to guess, but somewhere in South America they found these new shoot, I wish I could remember what country. There was people who were looking for rune stones, like carvings of runes in South America, and they're like, "This, when were these here?" And they question these must be newer than we're told. Who knows? It's still debated. But what was really interesting was there was a cross symbol on one of the rocks, and the person took a compass and sat it down, and every line on this cross carved in stone perfectly aligned with north, south, east, and west
Oh, that's cool.
from
They
Wow.
knew about that.
likely a civilization that did not have a compass, and it's like that is freaking cool.
I mean, you don't necessarily need a compass to piece that together, though. I mean, you can easily see that the sun travels a predictable path through the sky. So just line that up. And I mean, it just, I would find just, figure that that's like deductive reasoning, but
I mean, you're right.
not
I'm
to discount
overhyping
it. I
it.
mean,
All right, forget it. It was that what they did wasn't cool. No,
no, no, my point is like, that's not to take away from it. It's just, wow, someone found a way without a compass to figure this out. To me, it's even
yeah.
more impressive.
I just want to
And
throw
to
one
etch it
thing
so
in
you're like
here.
even in the dead of night or whenever you have these symbols to help guide you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to throw in, though, the amazing technology of artificial intelligence that has been able to unravel some of these ancient scrolls, including
Oh, yeah.
here's just yeah, AI. It says AI has been instrumental in cross-referencing Gnostic texts like those from the Nag Hammadi library with biblical scripture. AI models have helped correlate archaeological findings, cities' names, reigns of kings, climate events with biblical timelines and prophecies, adding historical credibility to the biblical record. And so the idea here is that the Council of Nicaea and all of these other people who were in it to win it and to control the populations with all this nonsense and bringing all their weird stuff together. But today, we have the ability to discover, as Brian was saying, the truth for ourselves. I mean, the amazing capacity for this technology to reveal what was essentially always known from that beginning of, the 2000 year ago timeline. And now we have the evidence of how the things that are stated in the scripture are actually have been validated by these Gnostic texts. So, with all these people that are screwing with our minds and trying to get us to believe their version and this version, we get to see it for ourselves. I just wanted to say that.
No,
Excellent.
that's very insightful.
And we're talking about the remakes and films and movies and all that kind of stuff. Let's keep going, right? Noah's Ark. Was it Noah? No, no, that story's way older.
Oh,
The
yeah.
earliest version we found is his name was Ziusudra, sometimes referred to as Utnapishtim in Babylonian texts. From the Sumerian kings list of all things. We love this little controversial
Oh,
stone
yeah.
here.
Your favorite reoccurring
This
character.
tablet here. It's also in the Epic of Gilgamesh. I attended a webinar about that. You were talking about dreams before,
Yeah.
and they were talking about the ancient city Uruk. If you were a dream interpreter, if you had that ability, you were a very high society noble.
Yep.
You had high status for having that ability because people took dream interpretation even back then so seriously that they're like, no, that's a message, it's a sign. That's the divine trying to tell you something.
Wasn't that King David's story too, or one of the I forget. It's been a while since I've been to like Sunday school. But there's that one of the Jewish leaders from the Bible became friends with the Pharaoh or very close to the Pharaoh because he can interpret dreams really well.
That was
Wild.
Joseph.
Joseph was it? Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
I
his
can't remember.
brother
It's
his
been a while
brother
since I've been
sold him into slavery, and he was put into jail. And while he was in jail, uh, he was in there with two other men who had been accused of things,
Yep.
and he rightly interpreted that one of them would die and one of them would live, and the one that lived, it was dreams that these two men had had. The one that lived was close to the Pharaoh, and he told the Pharaoh about Joseph, and so he brought Joseph in, and he was the one who gave the story about 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, which turned out to be accurate. So dreams are very important. As a matter of fact, the Bible can two-thirds of the Bible have context in dreams in those two-thirds.
wild.
Yeah, it's
They
huge.
knew even back then. The mind is a gateway.
So I just wanted to give credit where credit's due.
Oh,
To Ziusudra, Utnapishtim, whatever you want to say here, that
that
the
guy.
great flood story, the giant boat saving the animals, surviving the flood. This was a story that the one that we found thus far it was written 1,000 years before the Hebrew Bible. They adapted the story into the tale of Noah. Not that there's anything wrong with the Noah's Ark story, but I think it's important to know that these stories have been passed down for so long. Think for something to survive for thousands of years and make it to another culture is
Oh yeah.
remarkable in and of itself.
And I
I'm
mean,
just a big fan of connecting those dots. I love seeing
oh
like
yeah.
how far back does it go? Watch when we find another clay tablet that's 500 years before this one was, you know.
And this in the rabbit hole gets deeper. I mean, on the note of the flood story, I mean that forms the backbone of Halo, which was up until recently has been one of the most popular sci-fi franchises like of all time. And the backbone is the story of the flood, which is this in an analogous sense just a purging force. In Halo, instead of it being literally water, it's this space plague that basically turns you into a zombie, so it's kind of silly, but that you have the flood, and then everyone was saved on this massive sunflower saved space station called the Ark. And so you can even see how that story's even passed down to like my generation and my kids' generation through our current mediums and stuff like
Sure.
that. That
Yeah.
story is always going to be preserved. You
You
look back
see,
far enough, you know.
I'm one who, and I think Ryan agrees with me, that we do not have accurate timelines of history. We just
Nope.
don't. The
No.
pyramids are a perfect example of that. The Sphinx has water erosion around every side of it, and including on the Sphinx itself. And that goes back to a time where maybe the Younger Dryas was happening. There was flooding everywhere. That's 10 to 12,000 years ago, maybe even further back. The timelines are all messed up. And so to me, it's actually kind of amazing that any history survived at all.
Yeah.
Oh, it
I'm
really is.
holding out hope that there will be that discovery from 12,000 years ago of the civilizations, or at least one of them that was likely wiped out in the Great Flood that must have happened at the end of the Younger Dryas. I know it's a controversial theory still, but everything is until you get the evidence. And there's so much out there to suggest that was the case. It's just to me, it's just a matter of time. Like the Piri Reis map, right? The 1500s. Let's get a picture of him up here. So Piri Reis, 1500s, um, had access to copies of maps from the Library of Alexandria. So these
Oh, that
are
were way more accurate than they should have
much
been, right?
older maps. Yeah, and it's like beyond the accuracy.
Yeah,
Where's like the really good this one? Like the accuracy is
the one I was thinking
unbelievable.
of.
But the main thing is that, Antarctica was discovered in like 1820 or 1821 or whatever. Well, they have it
And
like
why is it there?
perfectly mapped here, and it shows it without ice, which would have been Da-na-na-na. Younger Dryas. So it's like, how old were I mean, he pieced this together through hundreds of other source maps. Like, how old were some of the original copies of some of those maps? Obviously, these were copies of copies of copies that he got his hands on, but somebody preserved a thread from a much older time connecting those dots. And this is it's just so mysterious. It really this is
Now
the
think
stuff that
about
makes you
this.
wonder.
Right? To tie a little Native American history to it, if you trace my genes back, you can actually trace them all the way back to like the first people to ever settle California at all. So if I was like, I like to joke that my race is ethnically Californian. I'm not white, I'm not Hispanic, I'm Californian. It's its own thing. There's actually a term for that called Californio, by the way, that I just learned about. But anyway, so those people got there by coming across Beringia, right? The land
Allegedly. I
bridge
mean, most of
in
them, yeah. There could
yeah,
have been sailing as well, but the
yeah, yeah.
but the
But
general
like the,
accepted
the
theory is
mainstream
that is
narrative,
true.
just to keep it simple. But I
Yeah,
agree
yeah,
with
yeah, I
you.
got you.
But so people came through the Arctic, right? They came right through the Arctic. So why is it so freaking hard to believe that, if they came through the Arctic, why did they not settle anywhere? And they still stay there to this day. I mean, even Russia will have problems with people illegally crossing the border from Alaska into Russia. It happens when the ice freezes or when the water freezes, right? So is it, beyond the realm of possibility to believe similar things, even maybe with a lost canoe, did people settle the Antarctic? I think that just makes way more sense than to say, oh, no one's ever been there at all. Shut up. Like, no, if they settled the North Pole, the
Yeah.
South Pole is just as close.
Well, the other issue, aside from the Younger Dryas, is the polar shift. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
we
I didn't
don't
even think
know
about
how
that.
often the polar shifts occur, but they do occur and they've been verified.
Yeah, no, they
So,
happen quite frequently, actually.
yeah. So, I mean, who's to say where was what when? You know what I mean? And again, there are places in Antarctica that they have, if they dug down, they found forests,
Yeah.
right? Well,
Of
so
course.
I don't know. I don't know about the timelines of any of this stuff. I think historical timelines are a mess. They're
Oh, they're
just
just
they're
complete crap.
just disgustingly messy.
How many times has the earth, dried up and then got flooded again, right? It's not like there was just
Oh yeah.
one. It's
Yeah,
yeah, history's way more there's way more to it than we've figured out thus far, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah.
And that
Um,
that actually forms the backbone to one of my favorite franchises, where you find that the rabbit hole goes deeper than you thought. You think, oh, there's one civilization that was wiped out before us, and then you find, oh no, there was one before them, and
yeah,
so on and so on and so on and so on. And that's a big controversy that forms sort of the conflict of the game, is trying to prove,
that's
hey,
awesome.
that these civilizations existed before you thought they did.
Well, I just finished my book entitled "Earth Before Humans."
Yeah.
That includes humans, by the way, because there were different kinds of beings on this planet, and I have 50 pages on giants. Giants were a real phenomenon. We're talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh, but remember, we had dinosaurs that were how many tons and 75 feet long, and
Oh yeah.
there were huge creatures on this earth for a
40
very
foot
long time.
long crocodiles.
Oh my gosh,
Centipedes
the
you could
crocodiles
ride.
were enormous.
Yeah.
There were bugs you could ride. Like there were even like
Yeah,
you could ride a dragonfly like a dragon.
yeah, yep.
Like that's awesome, actually, to think about. I would love that.
And like, the depictions of Gilgamesh, like, he was a big dude, he was jacked. Like they're like there are things where like they make the king or the ruler taller than everybody else, but the writings are like, no, he was like a big dude. You did not mess with him.
I think he was supposedly 13 feet tall.
I
And
haven't
that's
seen,
not
yeah, I mean,
super beyond the realm. Wasn't there that one guy that was like 10, 11 feet tall or something like that?
Yeah. Well, they found skeletons in a cave in Arizona, 10 and 11 feet tall.
Yeah. And
this was
think about like the answer they give for why animals used to be so big, like why bugs used to be so big, dinosaurs used to be so big, is because oxygen levels
Jeez.
have fluctuated throughout time. And so is it possible to believe, and I think it is, that maybe there were times in our recent history where there was slightly more oxygen available that led to maybe more rapid and bigger, or more rapid cell growth in bigger people.
Yep. Totally agree. Look at that. Look
And
at the
I've seen
size of
like
that sample.
scientists
Yeah,
say
that's
like
huge.
that only would affect insects, not mammals or something, which I don't
Why would that
but
make any
this
sense?
is crazy. There's like the dude had a size 14. I think this is a size 14-foot shoe. Uh, so there was some big Roman soldiers too. Like, wow, imagine messing with this guy.
Mm.
Piggy, we found your shoe. Give a Hill reference.
All right, let me go through a few more. So like the Garden of
Yeah, sorry.
Eden, also an older Mesopotamian myth, the sacred garden, the tree of life, the serpent representing wisdom. The biblical version reframed this through a different lens of morality, so the symbolism changed to the original sin story. So it's interesting, and I mean, and there's people who are saying they found where the Garden of Eden was, which is also one of my favorite things with these when they find,
These historic
these
places.
mythical places, and they're like,
Yeah.
they were there. You can pinpoint a location where that originated from.
Oh, I
Um,
love that stuff so much.
Moses in the basket. That's this much older legend. Ten Commandments, Code of Hammurabi. I'm going to say it wrong
Hammurabi.
again anyway. So all older things. The creation story. I had a
Hammurabi,
picture for that somewhere. There was a Babylonian creation myth for that. Um, let's get into all the virgin birth stories, right? How many of those are there? Horus, Egyptian, virgin birth to Isis, son of Osiris, who was killed and resurrected. Osiris himself died, dismembered, reassembled, resurrected. Another god of death, rebirth, Dionysus.
Sounds like a self-assembling robot to me, but go ahead.
Yes, right. That's
You know
pretty
what? That was
hardcore.
my thought, actually. That was the first thing that popped in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like what was going on? In Greek, Greek mythology, born a mortal woman, dies, is reborn. Mithras, Persian, Roman, still here, born from a rock. So you could say that's like a virgin birth equivalent. It wasn't like your typical way you're conceived and born. Dies and is resurrected. Guess what her birthday is? December 25th.
Mm.
Krishna, Hindu,
Oh, yeah.
born of a virgin mother, divine child, savior figure, miraculous deeds. Um,
But let me make a point here.
please do. Yeah.
There are instances of nature that have regular virgin births. Sometimes alligators, sometimes penguins. I don't know. I've heard of a number of animal species that just end up pregnant for some reason without any contact with the opposite sex. I'm just saying.
And you can see, as an ancient people, you would see something so bizarre, right?
Parthenogenesis. Yeah.
And you would associate that with just automatically divinity. I mean,
Lizards, sharks, snakes, and birds. Yes.
yeah.
I know I saw it in penguins.
Very
So
cool.
I can imagine how, you see this person that, that was
Crocodiles.
their story, and then you build a mythology around them. Like, that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
But see, the point is that it does point because nature is consistent. Humans are natural. Humans are creatures of nature. So it's,
you.
it is possible. There's consistency there that it's possible to have a virgin birth. Would that person potentially be different than other people? I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Most definitely.
They have very unique genetics for sure, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a wild one. And I can keep going. I mean, there's plenty more examples. You could do your own research. The point was just to expose people to say, um, it's not like people were people for thousands of years, and then Jesus appeared, and he was the one. It's not to put him down, but that idea of the virgin birth, Son of God, resurrection story was also a legend told around the world for thousands of years. It's super interesting how there's so many things about humans and human nature that whether we've ever come in contact with each other, we arrive at the same beliefs. Uh, it's really interesting when you think about it.
But in terms of mythology and stories, I mean, we are beings that are designed to how can I say this? Stories mean everything to us. A story is why we
Yes.
go to the movies. I mean, our brains are wired for stories. So,
We
Yeah.
crave them.
right? What if over a period of, let's say, a million years, what if there are episodes in history where somebody has to come into the scene in a different way, let's say as a result of some kind of unusual birthright? Because remember, birthrights were how kings are designated, and
Yes.
you see what I'm saying? So we don't just discount the idea that these things have significance, because they must have significance. Who knows? We don't know much about our own human history. Look at what they found under the Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah. Like, oh, we thought we knew everything about those. And then, like, 2025. Oh, by the way.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear the one of the scientists that discovered did the size I can't even talk. I'm so excited.
Two
Did the
days from now.
scans. Yeah.
2 more days, Cosmic Summit 2025.
Yes.
We're
Mhm.
I'm like
be
just
on
as
that.
excited for that as I've been for like E3 before they got rid of that.
Yeah. So, that's the point. The Bible didn't emerge in a vacuum. It's the remix of older myths and cultural practices, repackaged for political and religious control. Um, but it's not like there's anything inherently wrong with those stories, right? It's a compilation of the most important stories of the time, and they just decided
Universal truths,
these are
I
the
think.
ones that we're going to stick with. And then there were
Well,
obviously like some chapters where there were other writers that they, well, go ahead.
but
You get what I'm
but
saying.
for the ages, see, for look, they call they traditionally in history they called them epochs. There were different epochs throughout the history of human experience. In this epoch, we have stories that build around a central idea, because who doesn't want, um, just going to say salvation. I want salvation. What do I want salvation from? Futility. A futile life as a human being, like the living dead, a zombie that walks around, and I know that I'm going to die one of these days. So yes, I love the idea of a savior that comes with an eternal promise. I think every epoch in the history of humans has some kind of representation of that to
Yep.
keep us from giving up and just saying, what's the point of living anyway?
And right, and
Yep.
like that would be the reason why those stories survived for so long and were
Of
passed down.
course.
Like this was like a
Yes.
compilation that like you could read, you can get a copy of whatever scroll and this and that. This is like, hey man, if you're gonna read, you gotta read these books. These are the best ones.
Yeah. Well, not only
Yeah.
that, but talk about the ancient Egyptians. They were obsessed with the afterlife. So,
Oh, yeah.
whatever the afterlife is, everybody has their own version of that. Now today with science, I mean, there's a lot of doctors in ER situations that see people die and then are revived and they tell their stories. Many doctors are coming around to the idea that there's an afterlife. We don't know what that means yet. We don't know. Just saying.
Yeah. And it's wild that those stories, right? Like, oh, well, culture must have been so different back then, or like the Greek tragedies. It's evergreen. It has withheld the test of time. Those stories, I mean, they make modern remakes, they barely change it. It applies to current life so well that they are the timeless stories. That's why they
I mean,
made the list. That's why they're in the book,
There
right?
you go.
people have always been people. Like, I forget who it was. I just remember the context of the story and thinking it was funny. But there was his famous, I think, ancient Greek historical figure who would complain that all the women dressed around were sluts and dressed just terribly because no one knew where silk came from back then.
Yeah.
They just, knew it was rare. And so they had to stretch it out. And so everyone was walking around in silk sheer clothing. And so I forget which historical figure it was, but he was like, "Oh man, these kids these days." It's like, wow, sounds familiar, doesn't it?
That's hilarious.
People are people. We've never changed.
Yep. I think Dave, I think we talked about this in like the first after show of like it's always the same, like it's a different person in a different outfit, but it is always the same, right? It's like it was, oh, the Beatles with their long hair, oh, Elvis shaking his hips,
Yeah.
Yep.
and then it was whatever was in the 80s, and then Britney Spears. It's like, oh, how could this get any crazy? Then Miley Cyrus, and you're like, my gosh, is there a shred of decency left? And it's like, no, no, we can go lower. Don't worry,
Yeah.
we got
Look at
social
society
media now.
today.
Yeah.
So it's like, but it's like your reaction, you whatever the generation is, right? The kids are like, oh, the older people are overreacting, and then you grow up, and then you're the older one that the kids are.
I'm noticing that
So it's
now.
the same. It's always the same. It never changes.
I'm noticing that
true.
about myself.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
We'll just have you guys watched the Wesley Huff episode of Joe Rogan? Just because this guy,
Oh, I don't
this
think
guy
it's
is
on
incredible.
Runway.
The guy's amazing. Yeah, Wes Huff is amazing.
It's definitely worth. I mean, you could watch probably you can watch like a 10-minute clip and you'll go, okay, yeah, I want to hear what else this guy has to say.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody articulate this stuff so well in such a.
Well, he speaks like 3 or 4 different languages.
Oh, I think
And
I think you could add a 0 to that. He's
Okay.
or I don't know, but yeah.
Well,
the
he's
dude is
able to
knowledgeable.
read from the original texts and
Exactly.
and get the real meaning of a lot of the stuff that most people do. I don't know what it means.
Yep.
He gets
And
it.
he's
He
pointed out
really
those
is.
little. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. That's why he's so interesting, because he's like, I'm not reading somebody else's interpretation. I learned how to read it from
Well,
its
this was the
source.
big controversy between him and Billy Carson, because Billy Carson made some claims and he said, "Wait a minute, show me where that is."
Yeah.
It was great. It was so great. Yeah.
I know Billy was so upset about that. It's really a shame that he.
Well, I
know,
think
he
he's
was
I think he's a total phony. Billy Carson is, but
Yeah, he's entertaining though, right? Like and that's the thing. Like, it's always good to know that distinction of like when Billy Carson talks, you're like, that's crazy.
yeah.
Oh wait, it actually is crazy.
Yeah. Oh wait, yeah, it is
But
crazy.
then like Wesley comes around, he's like, well, let's look at this from an incredibly analytical and precisely
Right.
accurate way.
Mhm.
And the way he speaks is like, I wish that he could cover more stuff because I like his style.
Yeah, that's
I
why
was
knowledge
watching
matters, though.
Yeah.
And I was
So-
watching this documentary last night on this plane crash, and they were talking about one thing you have to do is go in completely blind. No preconceived notions when you're doing the investigation. You're not looking for anything in specific. You're just looking. And I feel like that has been just completely
I love that.
lost.
That's a great observation. Yeah,
I mean, the
because your
news-
biases, you have
yeah.
confirmation bias as a human being,
Yeah.
and your biases will destroy everything.
Oh, precisely.
Yeah. I mean, the news from, politics to tabloids, it's like they're manufacturing a story on, like, it's like go in to justify what you want it to cover rather than just cover it objectively.
That's it.
Like,
Exactly. There's always
got
a
that.
framing.
I saw this headline, like it's just, what was it? It's like Brad Pitt seen wearing a Hawaiian shirt in his latest midlife crisis. Like, he's literally a dude. He's walking around
Hawaiian
in a
shirt.
shirt.
In a shirt.
He's wearing a shirt, and you guys are like, he's having a midlife crisis because he wanted to wear a colorful T-shirt today.
It's so
I'm like,
weird.
how is that your take on it? Or like
Well,
the LA riots right now, or whatever. They're like,
oh, yeah.
there's an article that was like, look at the living conditions of the troops. They're laying on they have to sleep on the
Oh yes,
floor.
I did see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're troops. They're used to that. They sleep in the dirt. It's like,
Yeah, they're Marines. Like,
they're like, are they complaining? Like, how is that?
Yeah.
The headline is like the conditions of the troops. Like, okay. I don't.
The spin
not a story.
is in.
yeah, like there's I heard someone bring this up where like a great analogy is like, famous British royalty seen wearing women's clothing, and then you click on it and it's just the Queen.
Yeah.
They're like, well, we got our ad revenue. Gotcha.
Yep.
So don't
All about the framing,
Don't fall
you know?
for the rage clicks. Just if you can spot a headline that's not really news, don't give them the satisfaction. Just get the story from somewhere else. Because
Exactly.
oh my gosh,
Rage is
man.
one of our most powerful emotions. That's why that works so well. I mean, think about it. You're more likely to leave a negative review than a positive one.
It's completely true. Did you see Bill Burr he's a comedian. If you guys,
Oh, I know.
I know who he is. Yeah.
For everybody else, I'll just pull him up here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he's at some like like red carpet event, and they're all like with the microphones, like, "What do you think about the war? The Israel and Iran conflict. What do you think about Gaza?" And he's like, "What? You tell me. You're a journalist. I'm a
That's right.
comedian."
Yeah,
And
I saw that.
he just reamed the guy out. He's like, "You guys, what you do is
Good job.
BS because you're like, is this the thing?" He's like, "I don't
No,
know.
what he said was,
Journalist,
"I'm a
you tell me.
comedian.
Why are
You're a
you asking?"
reporter,
Yeah,
right?" Yeah,
you're the one that's
So,
supposed to have the information. Why are you
Yeah.
it was
asking
so
me?
funny.
I saw that.
So,
That was great.
not to get off, let's go to something lighter here. So there, hundreds of millions of people died in these wars. Let's just go through it. Boom. Wars, 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 wars. And then
Oh, my favorite is the Trojan
the
War.
Troubles.
10 years over a woman.
but this is like this is I pulled up examples from ancient history, this and that. Let's not forget Ireland,
Still
man. In recent times,
Oh
people
yeah.
we're still having this problem. It's like,
Yeah.
and
Well,
not
and look
that,
at, I mean, even with what's happening in the news right now, you have I mean, I don't want to be too controversial, but that's what it is. You have the
yeah,
Islamic State of Iran, and that's what they're called, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And then you have what a lot of people say, oh, it's a free state, but if the leader says it's a Jewish state, then I'm going to go with what he says. And so you have the Prime Minister of Israel saying, Jewish state. And so you have two ideologically driven forces that just are not going to get along. Oil and, and water.
Mongoose and serpent.
and then it's like, and who pays the price for the most part? It's the civilians. It's like,
The
what are
innocent
they,
people. I mean, I was
how are we
watching
the
live.
pawns? How are we the pawns in these situations?
And I was watching live as the rockets were raining right down in the middle of just towns,
Oh
not
yeah,
even military targets.
you watch that stuff on the news, and you're like, it is good to be an American because
Oh,
Hell yeah.
I don't
You don't
see
have to
that
worry
stuff
about
in
that
my
stuff.
backyard. And I feel for those people because that is just a reality that I can't
it's-
comprehend. That,
You-
or
I
like,
know,
even if you
it's
live
horrible.
like in between, like just you're not even one of the, and you just see it still streak across the sky, and you're like, oh, I guess Israel's going after him again today.
Yeah,
And then you
like
just go on about your day. Like
I
it's
saw this one
normalized.
video of this cruise missile flying over somewhere. I think it was just before the Ukraine war broke out, but it was like in Eastern Europe somewhere. And this cruise missile is passing through one country, going to another.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just creepy. And I like airplanes and stuff. Yeah,
Did you guys
that
ever
is
see the
amazing.
movie The Chronicles of Riddick?
I know that. I haven't
I'm
seen
familiar.
that.
I've never watched it, but I
Well,
watch
anyway,
it.
there's a group of evil aliens called the Necromongers, and they'll go from planet to planet, converting everybody to their death cult. That's what it reminded me of, seeing those missiles going through the air.
There's in Halo, one of the big plot lines of that is you're fighting this religious force, which is this confederation of alien races from across the galaxy, and they're all led by these religious leaders they just call the prophets, who misinterpreted this prophecy left by this ancient civilization where humans weren't supposed to exist, but because we do, it was like it was clear that they mistranslated their prophecy.
Mm.
And so they keep that under wraps in order to keep, hegemony over all these other races. So it's similar in what they do. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. And what they do is they go across the galaxy, just glassing is what they call it, human worlds. So any planet that has humans on it is turned into just basically a smoldering slag in space. And it's just a religious thing. You cannot reason with them. Your existence is blasphemy. Just the fact that you are alive is a sin that must be cleansed.
Well, again, it's mongoose and python. Not python. What's the snake?
Oh, God, my brain stopped working. Anyway, mongoose and cobra.
and cobra. Cobra's cobra. Mongoose and mongoose. They just don't get along.
No, and there are some forces in this world that are just like that. I mean, it's really naive to be live and let live. I joke with my wife. She's a huge Avatar: The Last Airbender fan.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, the world was all living in harmony until this one nation tried to take over the rest of the world.
Yeah,
And I
the
was
Fire
like,
Nation. Yeah.
Yep. If they didn't, someone else would. It's like I'm a big Fire Nation fan, not only because I like steampunk stuff, but Yeah, if they're not under, if they're not controlling everything, someone else is going to fill that power vacuum.
Well, that's true.
So I know we're going long here, so I'll try to.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry.
let me help to start wrapping this up. So,
Okay.
Sorry about that.
while we're talking about the Middle East, the early spread of Christianity started in the Middle East, right? It wasn't a European thing and then spread outwards. You know, it spread east and south first, not west, right? They were talking about
Yeah.
Egypt, Alexandria. This was a huge early Christian center. Ethiopia. I mean, we could do a whole episode on Ethiopia. Um,
Oh yeah.
Armenia even. So it's just really interesting. The Middle East is celebrating Jesus Christ, and meanwhile in Rome, they're persecuting Christians at well into the third century. It's just really not quite the picture I remember being taught in my history book in school.
Oh, for sure.
So all right, so synchronicity, right? Back to where we started. Um, all these at the core of a lot of these religions and spiritual systems are these coincidences or signs, messages from the higher power, your spirit guide, or the universe itself.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've had anything quite as profound as David, but there have been times where it was like a presence in the room with me. Like it felt like this, like a bigger brother. You had that comfort,
Yeah.
protective feeling where you're like, somebody's with me. We're gonna get through this. They're gonna make sure that I get through this. I mean, I've had that sensation, and you do feel it in the like your EMF field. You can tell when somebody's looking at you from behind
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that same sensation where you're like, somebody's behind me looking at me. It's the same, yeah.
I know that feeling.
So like what is it? Is it as a human, right? Let's look at it from just our ape brain kind of thing. Is this just because it breaks from the normal flow of randomness and routine? It feels more profound, we're wired to recognize patterns, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It's not noise. It feels like a signal. I don't know.
Well, the Carl Sagan quote, again, I know I reference him a lot, but he's basically my Jesus. uh, the cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff, which is true. All the elements in your body have come from exploded stars long ago. And he ends that thought with, we are a way for the universe to know itself. So we are part of the universe is within us, and we are sort of a conscious manifestation of the universe. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe we have that deeper link. Maybe that's what that, over your shoulder feeling is just the universe,
I think the human race is a crucible, and it is a crucible for angel type material, so that people in this world have a potential to become so much greater than just another body walking around. That we could eventually become something useful in a cosmic way, in a celestial way. And if and so there were people, by the way, recorded in history, Enoch and a few others that were translated, that they never saw death. So I think that the potential for all of us to have a higher trajectory above this world and beyond this world, it's all here. It's like Prego. It's all the ingredients are here for us to become these sort of spiritual super beings, but without temptation, as William Prescott said, you have no claim to virtue. So we have all these tests in life. We got to pass the test so we can graduate to the next level.
Yep.
Amazing.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I appreciate you guys having this conversation with me, because I know, like I said, I think people have come around. I don't really think that this was really that controversial of a discussion. I hope nobody's offended by this. I just keep an open mind. I try not to let the blinders distract me, and I walk my own step. But it doesn't mean I'm not a believer. That's the whole
Yeah,
point.
well, forget about what everybody else thinks, first of all, and just be you. You
Right,
do you.
yes. Do you,
At
man?
the end of
Do
the
you.
day,
Don't
higher
let those-
power or not, you're accountable to you.
I think
know?
that's the first step to finding your path, right? That if you're persuaded by those influences, you will end up on that path. If you listen to your heart, you will end up on your own path.
Yeah, you march to your own drummer. Don't march to somebody else's drum.
Before humans, Earth was a different world, populated by reptilians, dinosaurs, towering humanoids, and entities that defy modern understanding. In Earth Before Humans by David Masters, journey into a lost age, where the Watchers and Nephilim, wielding arcane knowledge, shaped hybrid creatures and altered the natural order. They were masters of a world that blurred the line between creation and chaos.
These beings weren't myth. They were masters of an unimaginable world of terrestrial aliens, hybrids, and strange spiritual manifestations. Discover another dimension of history the experts don't teach. Explore the suppressed evidence. Confront the truth about what ruled this world before modern humans. Earth Before Humans. Available now at escapeyourmindsprison.com. That's escapeyourmindsprison.com. Break the illusion. Face the forgotten.
So my YouTube channel is Runway25 Productions. My what is it called? My slogan or whatever is my tagline. There we go. Is I talk about the lesser discussed vehicles in fiction. By that, I give you the lore behind them, the in-universe lore, and I try to tie that to real history when it's applicable. I just finished a video on a fictional bomber based off of the B-29 called the BM-335 Lindworm, which carried out a genocidal nuclear attack in Ace Combat. And there's some real history involved there that actually ties to religion, oddly enough, because the reason they used that plane to carry out the nuclear bombings was because they believed their Holy Land was to the north, and they didn't want the enemy forces that were invading their country to go any further, deeming any footsteps on their Holy Land as blasphemous.